Tonight, the arrival of Omicron sparks urgent talks on borders and booster shots, but also a call for calm. Airport reunions fast-tracked over fears travel rules are about to change again. A COVID outbreak among unvaccinated protesters. Police closing in on the final piece of the missing campers puzzle. The father of Novak Djokovic accuses Australian Open organisers of blackmail, declaring his son is unlikely to play. And why it's been hard to get a good night's sleep and what to do about it.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. There's a worldwide call for calm tonight as scientists and doctors assess the true threat posed by the new COVID strain. There are 5 confirmed cases of Omicron in Australia. It's throwing travel plans into chaos and has sparked an urgent review into the rollout of booster shots.
A worldwide rush for information, Omicron is gradually revealing itself. It seems to spread faster. Some doctors say it makes people less sick. Importantly, vaccines still work.
We have no definite evidence, either clinical or laboratory or at the population level, that the vaccines are less effective against this virus.
One of 2 Omicron cases in Sydney travelled briefly to Victoria. That person, vaccinated and without symptoms, is now isolating back in New South Wales. Close contacts here are isolating for 14 days, officials taking a conservative approach. A traveller at Howard Springs also has the new variant.
Alert, not alarmed.
A new Omicron case confirmed in Canada adds to the spread through Europe, the Middle East, Asia and Australia. 12 countries in 3 days. Tonight, many have banned travellers from Southern Africa, where Omicron was discovered.
Now, these restrictions are completely unjustified and unfairly discriminate against our country.
Every country that's decided to close its borders to South Africa is doing the right thing. They're being highly precautious.
The South African doctor who raised the alarm about the new variant tells the world not to worry.
Currently, there's no reason for panicking as we don't see severely ill patients.
Dr Coetzee reports the most common complaint, severe fatigue for 1 or 2 days. A handy evaluation, but far from definitive.
Some reports out of South Africa are that it's mostly mild. Other information we have is that hospitalisation rates are increasing, so we need to get further information there.
If Omicron does settle on being more mild but with a faster spread, it could be a way to provide the world with natural immunity.
That would be my number one Christmas present. But I just really say very clearly we're not at that position yet.
An antibody treatment for the disease being used here, called sotrovimab, could work against new variants.
GSK report that they designed that antibody, that specific antibody, for exactly this purpose.
About 500,000 Australians are due a vaccine booster shot. Bookings are being filled quickly.
It's an extraordinary turn up for boosters, well ahead of expectations, well ahead of schedule.
Australia's Vaccine Advisory Group will consider a shorter window than the current 6 months if this new variant changes the game.
And Blake Johnson joins us now. Blake, there is one unexpected benefit to having the Omicron strain in Australia.
Pete, it means we could be among the first in the world to assess what this new strain means for our vaccines. The Omicron variant has effectively been harvested from one of those 2 cases in Sydney. It's now been grown in a lab in Australia and tested against the vaccines we have here. Greg Hunt says he has spoken to the CEOs of the companies that make Pfizer and Moderna and has received assurances if and when there are updated vaccines, we will receive them. Pete?
Blake Johnson at Docklands, thank you. Holiday plans are again in limbo just as international borders reopen and global tourism resumes. Overseas arrivals currently need to isolate for 72 hours, but there is speculation that could soon change to 2 weeks.
Flying back into the arms of her father. After 2 years working in Singapore.
So glad you're home.
Adele Hurst rushed home early because of uncertainty about the new variant.
I was going to come back actually next Sunday, but then, given all the restrictions and really a rapidly evolving kind of circumstance, I suppose, just literally, I decided at 5 a.m. yesterday in Singapore to change the flight to today.
She and Dad will now have 3 days home isolation together.
It's amazing to be home.
There's speculation the current 72-hour quarantine for all overseas arrivals could increase to 14 days, just as aviation and tourism were taking off again, heading into the busy Christmas period.
You can understand they want to be a bit cautious because we don't know too much about it yet, but I think not panicking is probably the big message at the moment.
We've been down this path so many times, it just makes everyone incredibly nervous.
I guess the safest thing I could say is maybe we need to holiday in Victoria.
Victorians heading overseas aren't sure what they'll come back to.
I think I'm going to place it in God's hands. I think that's the only thing to do.
I'm still going. We're living with the virus, so we have to learn to adapt.
We're all vaccinated, so should be all right.
Very concerned, yes, in case flights are cancelled, borders closed, it seems to happen at very short notice.
I know a few people that have already cancelled their arrangements going overseas.
Because of this?
Because of this, yeah, automatically.
They'll probably hold off booking for a little while, maybe a week or two at least, until there's more definite about what exactly is going to happen. Certainly some short-term pain.
The next step in Melbourne reopening is welcoming back international students and skilled migrants. They're due to start arriving on Wednesday, a decision that will be reviewed by the National Security Committee.
We will consider that in the light of all the new information, and that's what we have to do with this.
For the Beirusi family from Hampton Park, there was an unexpected setback as they started a trip to Serbia.
I'm devastated. I'm overwhelmed.
One son had his second jab 5 days ago. To fly, it needs to be at least 14.
My husband and my son, they have to stay. And we have to go. They have to come up 9 days after.
And by then, so much could change. Paul Dowsley, 7 News.
To breaking news now, and the Prime Minister is convening a national security meeting as we go to air tonight over the new COVID variant. Political editor Mark Riley has the latest. And Mark, what's on the agenda?
Well, Peter, senior ministers are getting the latest update from health experts with a focus on whether the planned reopening of borders to skilled workers and foreign students on Wednesday should go ahead or be delayed. I'm told opinion on that is divided because there'll be no meaningful data out of South Africa on the seriousness of this threat for at least another week. The government has also asked health authorities whether booster shots should be administered sooner than the current 6 months after the second jab in response to this. And Scott Morrison's called an emergency meeting of the National Cabinet for tomorrow, hoping for a unified response from the premiers, but with different quarantine arrangements already in place and WA and Queensland reassessing their restrictions, it seems National Cabinet could again be splintered. Mitch?
Mark Riley in Canberra, thank you. It could be another couple of weeks before scientists fully understand how our current vaccines will protect against the Omicron variant. America's top experts believe they'll all offer some protection, but booster shots may need to be tailored.
The pandemic takes an exasperating new turn, and President Biden flies back to Washington to question his COVID team. What are they telling the president about Omicron?
Inevitably, it will be here.
7.9 billion shots of the various vaccines already given worldwide. Could this new variant simply sidestep them?
People who are working on a vaccine, they have a pretty good degree of confidence that a boosted vaccine, so 3 full doses of vaccine, is going to be fairly protective against this new variant.
Vaccine maker Moderna is more cautious. It and others are scrambling to test their shots against Omicron.
We have to go through a couple of weeks yet of uncertainty.
One possibility, he says, we all need a booster shot targeted to the new variant.
We think within weeks, maybe 2 to 3 months, we would be able to have a Omicron-specific vaccine booster.
This as South Africa's president hits out at Australia and others who've shut down flights from his region. President Biden's chief COVID advisor applauds South Africa for warning the world, but backs the travel bans as giving countries time.
Utilise the time that you're buying to fill in the gaps.
In the United States, Tim Lester, 7 News.
Back home, and there has been a surge in the number of COVID cases linked to protesters attending recent city demonstrations. Cameron Bowe has the details, and Cameron, most of them are unvaccinated.
Mitch, recent protest action has sparked a COVID outbreak. 19 cases have been linked to recent demonstrations, with one person in hospital. Of those cases, 16 people are unvaccinated, 2 people have had 1 shot, and 1 person is fully vaccinated. Another 10 people have caught the virus after attending a social gathering with an infected protester. Now, Victoria's overall case numbers hover around the 1,000 mark. 300 COVID patients are in hospital. That's up 17 on yesterday. Another 3 people with COVID have died. They were aged in their 70s and 80s, Mitch.
Cameron Bowe at Police Headquarters, thank you. A major police operation is underway in remote East Gippsland for the bodies of missing campers Russell Hill and Carol Clay. Cassie Zervos is there tonight, and Cassie, detectives are still establishing the search scene.
Well, Mitch, the first arrivals of this task force remain in the hills behind me, bringing in all-terrain equipment to tackle this dense bushland. Dozens of police officers will be back on the ground tomorrow, continuing the search at first light tomorrow. Inside the suspected crime scene, where campers are clearing out, making way for police.
Had a conversation with Parks, and they just said the roads are closed. There's a police incident happening near Grant, and that's about all they said.
These historic gold hills are home to dozens of old mine shafts, now possible burial sites for campers Russell Hill and Carol Clay. This area is the focus for police after accused killer Greg Lynn was arrested last week and questioned for 4 days. A team of 24 specialist police is being sent to the region, including forensic anthropologists, their job to identify human remains. Detectives are preparing for a complex 2-day search of this high country terrain.
Trying to squeeze everybody in to accommodation and food, obviously, because there's nowhere else to eat in town.
7 News understands police have been able to pinpoint an exact search zone within the Grant Historic Campsite, and that Jetstar pilot Greg Lynn has previously spent time in this remote part of East Gippsland.
Piece of cake. Who's scared? Me.
Gregory Lynn was a frequent camper in this region, but is now behind bars at the Melbourne Remand Centre, with police confident they're close to solving the missing piece of the puzzle, where he's accused of hiding the bodies of his 2 victims. Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
There has been a deadly crash west of Melbourne. A 28-year-old Dales Creek man was killed when a ute and a car collided at Ballyang just before 6 o'clock this morning. The driver of the car died at the scene. Police are speaking with the driver of the ute. A federal election could be on the cards for May, with the government most likely to bring forward the budget for an Easter campaign blitz. The revelation comes as Scott Morrison faced more heat over plans for a national corruption watchdog.
An announcement with no fanfare.
I moved the program of sittings for 2022 be agreed to.
Next year's parliamentary sitting calendar suggesting a May election is the government's preferred option.
This is effectively a sitting calendar designed for a parliament that doesn't meet.
Bringing the budget forward from May to March 29, pointing towards 3 likely dates, May 7, 14 and 21, for an election built on pandemic politics.
One of the best responses to COVID in the world.
With government unity crumbling, minimising the risk of further parliamentary embarrassment with just 10 days of sitting next year before the expected election.
If there was ever an active moment that the government gave up, this is it.
An early budget and a May election is exactly what Scott Morrison did in 2019, now trailing in the polls, perhaps hoping doing it again will deliver a second miracle election win. He could still spring a surprise with a March election, but that wouldn't give Scott Morrison time to legislate a National Integrity Commission, thereby breaking a promise from the last election.
The government has a proposal for such a commission.
Proposal but no bill before the Parliament. Meeting spelling bee champions. The hardest word they faced?
Pariah. Pariah, okay.
Most political leaders know how to spell that one. Mark Riley, 7 News. The father of Novak Djokovic has hit out at the vaccination rules for the Australian Open, saying his son probably won't play in Melbourne. Melina Saris is at Melbourne Park this evening, and Melina, he claims his son is being blackmailed because he won't reveal his vaccination status.
Mitch, he's not happy with our state's restrictions or vaccine requirements, telling a Serbian TV station it's blackmail. All players must be fully vaccinated to compete in the Australian Open here in January, but Novak Djokovic has refused to disclose whether or not he's had the jab. His father says he doesn't know whether his son is vaccinated, but it is a private matter and he probably won't compete under these conditions. Sports Minister Martin Pakula has hit back in a tweet saying visiting tennis stars have a responsibility to protect the health and the economy of the community they're visiting, in this case Victoria. It's not blackmail. 34-year-old Novak Djokovic has won the Australian Open 9 times. If he competes here in the Australian Open in January, he would be vying for a record-breaking 21 Grand Slam titles. Mitch.
Melina Saris at Melbourne Park, thank you. More sport now with Tim Watson. And Tim, another AFL club has been hit by COVID.
Mitch, in breaking news, one of Collingwood's senior players has tested positive. Tom Brown has the latest from the Pies headquarters. And Tom, it's delaying their pre-season now.
Tim, it is a positive case in the Collingwood's men's program late last week. I understand all those affected tested negative over the weekend, and we're back in at the club today, but they have delayed training. They'll train outside tomorrow. It's delayed their training by 1 day. Tim, these cases in the AFL, broadly speaking, now becoming very commonplace to the extent that a lot of them are going unreported. I'll have more details shortly in sport and also reveal details exclusively on a huge donation for the Saints. Tim.
Thanks, Tom. Also ahead, bomber Michael Hurley makes a long-awaited return to the track after hip surgery, and the battle for Tim Payne's replacement heats up, with some test greats backing Josh Inglis for the spot, and Jamie Whincup prepares to go down fighting in his farewell race at Bathurst. I'll see you again soon.
OK, Tim, thanks very much. The arrival of Omicron means there's new pressure to end Victoria's pandemic laws standoff. Next, protesters armed with scissors at Parliament, where the legislation deadline looms. Also, a Thornbury cafe vandalised and the owner sent a death threat. The moment two men were taken hostage by a gunman. The country ditching the Queen as its head of state. And a little later, why sleep has become hard to come by this year and what to do about it. Vandals have attacked a Thornbury cafe and sent the owner a death threat. A window and the front door was shattered by bricks during the overnight attack. The written death threat was stuck to COVID safety signs on the door.
We've had it pretty tough. At times it's been hard for us to find the funds to pay our rents.
3 cafes in nearby High Street were also damaged by bricks. The state government is still scrambling for the 4th and final vote it needs to pass its controversial pandemic legislation. But with just 3 sitting days left in Parliament, time is quickly running out.
A protest pamper session on the steps of Parliament, as unvaccinated, out-of-work hairdressers gave their unvaccinated clients a once-over.
Gotta take care of everyone, guys. Spread the love.
Also cutting it fine is the state government.
Those negotiations are continuing and are likely to continue for at least the next couple of days.
Debate on the pandemic bill will resume in the upper house tomorrow, and the state government is still scrambling for a 4th critical vote.
With the emergence of the Omicron strain of the virus, is that more than ever do we need this sort of modern pandemic framework.
The state opposition has urged both state and federal governments not to cause unnecessary fear.
The last thing we want is the 14th new strain of coronavirus being used by any government, particularly our state government, to peddle in the politics of COVID and the politics of fear.
The most likely to change their vote, crossbencher Clifford Hayes or Rod Barton. Both have said they need to see major changes to the bill.
They're strong negotiations, they're good negotiations, and we'd like to thank the crossbenchers who've engaged constructively.
This week is meant to be the final Parliament sitting week of the year, but the state government hasn't ruled out adding extra days to the calendar to ensure the legislation passes before the December 15 deadline.
It's my job to be here, so I'll be here.
The negotiations will continue for as long as they need to continue.
Chanel Vella, 7 News.
A man has been stabbed at a basketball stadium in Altona North. A fight broke out when a group of men returned to the venue after a game and attacked match organisers. A man in his 20s suffered multiple stab wounds and was taken to hospital. The man held at gunpoint during yesterday's siege in Wollongong says he feared for his life. Simon Fleming is accused of opening fire, shooting at cars and pedestrians. Keith Woods and his 60-year-old employee Neil Hay were then taken hostage.
He says, right, guys, get behind the counter. I'm a terrorist. I didn't know if we were going to die right then or it was going to go any further.
Fleming is now behind bars, facing multiple charges. The Caribbean island of Barbados is about to become the first country in almost 30 years to ditch the British monarchy and become a republic. Prince Charles has arrived there to witness the transition.
In this slice of paradise, they've found another reason to smile.
It feels really good to me and heartwarming that we can stand on our own.
Marina Rudder has decorated her garden, been making traditional Barbadian conkies with her 19-year-old daughter too.
You have to put a little water in the pot, then you base it with some of the same banana leaves.
All to celebrate a new republic. The Prime Minister announced the change last year, nearly 4 centuries since the British first arrived, a history dominated by slavery.
Barbados has come a long way and we are more than ready to make our own decisions.
But among some, it's controversial. There was no referendum.
They should have asked the people, and they didn't.
It leaves just 15 countries, including Australia, where the Queen is head of state. Barbados will retain its membership of the Commonwealth like the republics of South Africa and India.
When Prince Charles attends the Republic ceremony here in Bridgetown, it's said he'll be watching on with some pragmatism, but it won't be easy. Barbados becomes the 18th country to remove his mother as head of state during her reign. It's thought Jamaica could be next.
In Bridgetown, Barbados, Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
As Melbourne springs back to life this festive season, over 40 restaurants in the CBD will be giving back to the vulnerable. The Dine Smart campaign encourages local foodies to dine out and donate.
You can be enjoying a meal but also donating funds to a project that's providing safe accommodation and support services.
The initiative runs through December to help the homeless. Jane Bunn joins us now. Jane, we're finally getting a taste of warm weather in spring.
Which we really are indeed, and quite a change as there hasn't been much of it. Today we reached 28.7. Cup Day was our other warm day, 29.7. Last year there were 6 days over 30 degrees, but this year we haven't quite reached it yet. Now, if we don't get there tomorrow, it'll be the first spring without a 30 in 20 years. Now, we may just get there tomorrow, and regardless, it should remain warm for a few days after that. I'll have the beachy outlook after sport, Mitch.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jane. A new report on schools might surprise some families. Next, why the best performing schools aren't always the most expensive. What's being done to save thousands of retired racehorses from being put down? That's coming up too. The incredible story of a flight stowaway who survived. And new clues to reverse the effects of ageing and to stay healthy for longer. Government schools have outperformed private schools in a number of suburbs across Melbourne. The Better Education website has ranked the top high schools based on ATAR scores and other academic results. Melbourne High, which is a selective school, performed better than nearby independent schools Lauriston and St Kevin's College. Glen Waverley Secondary College, University High and McKinnon Secondary were also among the top-ranked government schools. A long-awaited report into horse cruelty has called for sweeping changes to the way retired racehorses are treated. Training legend Gai Waterhouse welcomed the report but declared the scandal overblown.
The report recommends many more programs like this, retraining retired racehorses for dressage.
I think we've got the beginnings of a really good welfare program, but you can always do more.
Commissioned after it was revealed up to 10,000 ex-racehorses a year are sent to abattoirs, the report also recommends a national body to monitor welfare.
Not just while it's a breeding horse, not just while it's a racing horse, but for the next 10 or 15 years of its life.
Also, a database for horses after they leave the industry, national welfare standards and breeding to appropriate levels. The horse welfare scandal marred racing's image.
This is the biggest issue in racing. This is our biggest challenge.
One of racing's biggest names supports the report, but as for the scandal...
Totally overblown. You know, you always get people who want to make the worst of a situation. Yes, of course there are some bad situations, but if they've been in the past, we're here now to rectify them.
What is happening today is just another PR stunt that is aimed at trying to get people back to the races instead of actually doing something for racehorses.
It's estimated the program will cost between $8 and $10 million a year, and the industry is committed to paying that. Nikki Cook wants immediate action.
Now we need to see that funding trickle down to, these horses that are in need.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
The mother of a young army private who took his own life has described her son's pain at the start of the Royal Commission into Defence Suicides. She read from the letter he left behind, saying he felt bullied and belittled.
The thing that has finally pushed me over the edge was this job. Constantly being demoralised and ridiculed, I just could not handle it anymore.
More than 1,200 military members are known to have died by suicide between 2001 and 2019. A man has survived a flight stowed away in the landing gear of a passenger plane. He took off from Guatemala, hidden in the aircraft's wheel well, and was found alive at the other end in Miami. Temperatures would have dropped below zero during the flight, which lasted more than 2 hours. He was taken to hospital under police guard. Pop superstar Katy Perry is locked in a legal tussle with an Australian fashion designer over her name. The singer is being sued in the federal court by a designer with the same name over merchandise under a deceptively similar trademark. The court heard the artist tried to use her financial might to snuff out the Australian business. The hearing resumes tomorrow. We have new clues tonight that could lead to a treatment to keep older Victorians healthier for longer. Melbourne researchers say the long-term goal is to improve immunity in the over 60s to fight off illness.
As we age, we might feel fine.
I get tired, but no, I don't suffer from any illness.
I don't get colds particularly.
Good living, good eating, not too much drinking. So it's okay.
But the reality is our immune system weakens over time. It's why 90% of Australian COVID deaths have been patients aged over 60. Now, Melbourne researchers are hoping to boost our immunity.
They certainly get sicker. It seems to hang around a lot longer. They can get much more severely ill.
Scientists at the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute have been studying white blood cell DNA and have made a promising discovery.
We think we've found one of the molecular causes of immune ageing, in that how this DNA is packaged up in the cell gets disrupted. And the most exciting thing about that is that potentially it's reversible.
The research has so far been conducted on mice, but a new $1 million Commonwealth grant means the team can begin to study samples of blood taken from older Australians. Ultimately, the researchers' goal is to develop a simple treatment to give to Australians over 60 to help them fight off everything from colds to cancer. A long-term project with the aim of having more Australians enjoy healthier lives in older age. Jodie Lee, 7 News.
Businesses along a Northcote street have suffered a new setback. Next, first lockdowns, now roadworks are stopping customers from getting to them. Also a new way to stop those annoying scam text messages, and why the pandemic's been bad for sleep and what to do about it. Businesses in Melbourne's inner north have been dealt a fresh blow in the lead up to Christmas. High Street Northcote will be closed to traffic for the next week while Merry Creek Bridge is upgraded. Business owners say it's bad timing.
Absolutely crazy. Like, we've had 18 months of COVID. Now we've got 3 weeks before Christmas and no access.
But the Department of Transport says pedestrians will still be able to access the shops during the works. Telstra has developed new technology to help stop customers receiving scam messages. The telco can detect malicious texts as they're sent and block them before they hit phones.
As we develop this technology, we will see an improvement in the reduction, rather, in the number of SMSs or malicious SMSs getting through.
Telstra says it's already blocking an average of 13 million scam voice calls a month. It was a rollercoaster ride on the share market today with uncertainty over the new COVID variant. The ASX closed down 39 points. Travel stocks took another hit with new jitters over border rules, and one Australian dollar is buying just over 71 US cents. A good night's rest has become hard to find for many Victorians during the pandemic. Stress and uncertainty has added to the problem, but there are ways to change that.
Lockdowns, working from home, financial strain and isolation. It's a recipe for insomnia.
Because I wasn't doing anything during the day, I had nothing that was like tiring me out, so I found it quite difficult to fall asleep at night.
I found it hard to switch off.
Experts call it COVID-somnia.
An acute reaction to a really extraordinary stressful situation that as we're coming out of it, and we can see it in the rear vision mirror.
A global study across 63 countries investigating the impact of the pandemic found 70% of participants had increased stress levels and 50% reported poor sleep. Younger people suffered the most, with their sleep impacted by loneliness and anxiety.
The usual things around increased stress, financial concerns, the blurred lines too between work and home.
25% of people said their sleep had actually improved during the pandemic. They enjoyed a later bedtime and a slower start to the day without the morning commute.
I think because there was nothing to do, I was just exhausted all the time, and so I slept a lot. I was like napping during the day.
The Sleep Foundation's top tips to get a good night's sleep include maintain a regular bedtime, relax for an hour before bed and turn off screens, eat at least 2 hours before bedtime and get sunlight during the day.
It's a bit boring sometimes to be quite routine and sort of almost ritualised, but it really does support really good sleep health.
Melina Saris, 7 News.
Some of the biggest names in sport, media and politics have turned out at the SCG to honour the life of legendary Australian Test all-rounder Alan Davidson.
Somebody who gets to the very top of the game, but then devotes the rest of his life to giving back.
Known universally as Davo, he played 44 tests for Australia and he died at the age of 92. Sport is next with Tim Watson. And Tim, a COVID case has caused headaches for another AFL club.
That's right, Mitch. The Pies are the latest club to be hit with a player from the senior squad testing positive. We're live to Collingwood with the latest on the delay to their pre-season. Burley returns to the track at Essendon after a lengthy break. Why Spin King Shane Warne is looking a little worse for wear, and how Australia's newest world champion celebrated his incredible win.
On the significant last Friday
for the first
risk, but it was amazing. He's sick for his teammates after seeing the boat to his own.
That many of them.
Joe joined Truzy flicked by landed the ruse all out. At Carlton, Lopson, Jim left. In the wake.
Josh Inglis, where he's loyal
teammate.
A little bit. I thought the 20.
Or not, Inglis grew up out to Mrs. Son.
I think it's the pinnacle of
7-6
with the bat.
Been kicking on his brigade.
And the cap allowed to take
A David Warner kilo bike.
Green Cup is deemed to RFS run panorama 10 years. Meanwhile, after the age of 70, the Piss landed home. A boxing spent the hours up historic 4.
With 4, how long does this last?
Again, like force ranges, warm and storm spread back in storm, and it looks on its afternoon passing through in that one. It is cooler status and heads up to kilometres. Very different in the lots of sunshine. There in it there, lots of. The evening, it's only a bit much wet weather.
Right.
How will work? How much time can
is this 29?